Peter, Jason, thank you so much for joining me. It's a real pleasure to talk to you both. You both had a great impact on Thai football. But you obviously started off in the UK and you had an illustrious career playing for England, Aston Villa, Newcastle, Nottingham Forest. But you also had periods of time playing abroad in South Africa and the US. Do you think that influenced your decision to manage abroad and venture outside of the UK?
I would say so because at the time I sort of couldn't get a club in the UK, so the only opportunity for me to was go to South Africa and play in South Africa. So I'd got that opportunity to go there, which was a disaster in the first instance because I went to Port Elizabeth City and I didn't even know fooling at the time, so they thought it was someone else. So it was a bit of a disaster having there. And my wife didn't like it there. So we thought we were going to go back home, but we ended up getting this opportunity, which it's amazing how things work out here. Because I ended up signing for Arcadia Shepherds, who had guest appearances with Rodney Marsh and Derek Dugan. And that's where sort of my break came, because Derek recommended me to Wolves. So that started it, and then I went back to Wolves. Funnily enough, I asked Bill McGarry because I didn't get that many playing. I said, "Is it okay if I go back to South Africa and play in the summer?" So he went, "No, I don't want you to go to South Africa. I'm being part of the plans and I want you to stay." And then a month later he said, "How do you fancy going to America?" So that opened another door for me, as it were. So funnily enough, this year we're celebrating the 50th anniversary of the start of the Portland Timbers. So with this sort of celebrations being planned to commemorate the 50-year anniversaries. I don't know what it is yet, but I set up a WhatsApp thing that all the players who are still around, we communicate with each other and keep in touch with one another. So we'll be finding out sort of probably this month or next month the plans that they're going to do for the 50th anniversary.
A nice mark of the time there.
Well, yeah, it ended up with we started off with 9,000 supporters in the pouring rain, and we ended up with 38,000 people in the stadium for the last home game of the season. So that's where we got the nickname, and it's still to this day, Portland is called Soccer's City USA, because we were the biggest crowd anywhere at the time. So they still have the same nickname.
And at the time, it wasn't usual to move to the US and South Africa. So it was a big step moving abroad. And when you were moving abroad in your management career later on, it allowed you not to be worried about those changes and the climatization elsewhere.
Yeah, I think with regards to going abroad and managing abroad, it wasn't the sort of as big a wrench, as it were, to go to countries like, like Thailand and Indonesia, because I'd been to Zambia as a player coach to help a friend of mine out. So I'd already played and coached. I didn't go to coach. I didn't go to manage. I went to coach, but then realized we needed a centre forward, so I ended up playing. So I ended up registering playing as well. So I'd done sort of coaching and playing. The unfortunate thing is that when they offered me the job to stay there, and I remember picking up the paper, I think it was a newspaper, and reading about the national team, the plane going down. And of course, I'd lost, I think it was 6 or 7 of the players that I coached had gone down, basically, and so yeah, it was a good experience, and it put me in good stead with regards to going coaching abroad. I didn't feel intimidated in any way to go.
Jason, growing up with a father who was a professional footballer, how did that influence your own path into the game? Obviously, you grew up surrounded by football.
Yeah, I mean, I was quite fortunate. I've got 3 brothers altogether, including me, and because I was the oldest one, I ended up going with my dad everywhere, and the other 2 got stuck with my mum, so they were the youngest one. So I was quite lucky. silly things like going on top of the pops when my dad was on top of the pops with the England team, and obviously training every day, whether it was that, fond memories of Nottingham Forest and Newcastle and obviously Villa, because he was there as I was older for 5 years. So all I wanted to do was to be a footballer, really. I think that was my path. The school, as my dad mentioned, we moved around a lot. So I think we counted something like I had 10 junior schools at one point. And so education wasn't really the route for me, but football education and football was the route for me. So all I wanted to do was be a footballer. And I was fortunate enough to do that. I chose West Brom because my dad hadn't played for West Brom. Villa, Birmingham, Wolves, we lived in the Midlands, wasn't really an option. So West Brom was the one that he hadn't played for. So I thought I'd start off there.
Do you have many shared memories of like growing up in football, like occasions that you talk about a lot as a family?
Yeah, I think we do. When we, Jason was fortunate enough that out of the U could take him to training with me. He used to come to whatever I was training. He used to come with me, and he used to kick a ball around and just sit on the sidelines. I think there was only one coach who ended up telling me that he couldn't bring his son with you to training, which I didn't stay there very long after that.
So how did you end up moving to Thailand? What was the catalyst that brought about the Thailand job, Peter?
What happened was I ended up being at the head of European scouting at Aston Villa, and I was travelling quite a bit intensively all over Europe looking at players. We didn't seem to be small players, and I'd seen this advertisements from the FA advertising for a national coach, but it didn't say where, it just said a national coach, So I remember sort of sending my CV in, and then I was actually in Norway watching players. Aston Villa were both playing in Norway. I think it was Trabzonspor, I think they were playing or something like that. And I got a message saying, can you come for an interview tomorrow? And I was thinking, oh, I'm going to get back. I'm not supposed to be getting back until the following day. Anyway, I bladdered my way onto the flight with all the Aston Villa players, so that I had to get back. And then I went down to London to have an interview, and they said to me, they can't offer you the job. So I said, well, who is it? So he said, it's Warren Coody. It was the general secretary at the Thai national team. But that's true. And so I was being interviewed by these two people. Brian McCarr was the other one, who was the head of Charles and within 5 minutes, they offered me the job. So the guy was sort of elected from the FA. And he said, no, they can't do that yet. So they said to me, when can you get there? Can you get there next week? I don't know what you're going to do. So I said, I could come next week if you want me to. I said, I've got to wait to see what the FA says. Apparently they give them I think they give them 12 CVs. And I wasn't the flavour of the month with regards to the FA's choice. But I ended up being the flavour of the month because everyone they wanted someone who could basically bring the team back, because they ended up playing in the Tiger Cup, and it was a bit of a debacle because Indonesia and Thailand tried to throw down goals to try and not play Vietnam in Vietnam. So they wanted to play Singapore. So the two of them were trying to knock. So it didn't go down too well. So they needed to re-establish the national team, and they felt that if they brought someone in with a name like myself, then I could re-establish the team, which is, of course, what happened.
Jason, how did you end up? You followed on to BEC Tero a little while later. How did you end up in Thailand as well?
On holiday. Yeah, I went on holiday to visit them. And I just went there for the holiday, see what it was like. And Peter mentioned, my dad mentioned about Warren Withe and Brian McCarr. I actually met Brian McCarr, who owned BEC Tero at the time. I just generally just had a chat with him, and he offered me the job. And I kind of just took it with a pinch of salt and thought, no, I will see. I'll just go back to the UK and carry on I think I was working for the PFA at the time, delivering coach education, FA courses. And then they sent a contract in the post, which was a 2-year contract. And I just thought, yeah, I'll go for 2 years. I'll be back after 2 years. Didn't quite work out like that. It was 2 years turned into about 10 years being abroad. Took me on to Singapore, and then from Thailand to I followed my dad with Indonesia with the national team there. So it was a worthwhile trip, and again, similar to what my dad said, it was a good experience. It was seeing different cultures, and I enjoyed it. And now, I'm still working abroad. I'm here in India now.
So it was a family reunion in Bangkok. So what were your first impressions of Thailand when you first arrived, Peter?
I was pleasantly surprised the way that it was. I was met at the airport by one of the managers, who was to this day, his nickname is Big Hoy. Big Hoy was a flamboyant. He was an actor. He'd done everything. Big Hoy done everything, and he sort of took me under his wing with regards to, making sure that everything was right, making sure that we got a vehicle eventually, got the right apartment. And there was a lot of things that didn't go right initially, but they did eventually when we got what sort of to make Kathy happy. She wanted to live in the city, as everyone does. You don't want to be living in the outskirts. So we ended up getting apartments in the city. And, it was a situation where I was sort of working for the FA as well. I'm working for the British Embassy. So I got to know all the British Embassy staff. So they used to have functions, and we used to be invited to all the functions because they wanted me and Jason as well, when he was there, to attend them, to speak to whoever it was, the Thai people, Australian embassy, all different embassies used to go. So it was always a bit of it was a mad dash of time because we had to get out, train and get there. But it was sort of, and as when I got the job and they said to me, oh, by the way, you start coaching on, I think I arrived. In fact, I know when I arrived. I arrived on my wife's birthday, 23rd of October. It was a birthday. And sort of, they said, you've now got, start work on Monday, and you've got 3 weeks to prepare the team for the Asian Games. It was like, okay. So I didn't have, I was given a team. I was given 40, and they said, just whittle the players down to, the final squad of 22 players. So I went through 3 weeks of just coaching and picking players to get the best team that we possibly could. And then Big Hoy said to me, he said, if you just get through the first stages, that'll be a big achievement and I'll put us back on the map, as it were. And I looked at him and I said to him, I don't work like that. What do you mean? So I said, if I'm going to enter the competition, I'm entering the competition to win. And he was like, look, to me, this is to say. Anyway, we got to the semi-final, which was unheard of at the time, when we beat. They never beat the Korean teams. They always had a problem with teams from Korea, teams from Japan, teams from the Middle East. They always had problems because they had the sense that they couldn't beat them. I worked on the mindset of changing mindset to say, well, here, when you go on pitch, you've got every chance to win a game. Jason will tell you probably a little story about when I lost my job, is that I was doing sports psychology with the players from the day I arrived. He'll tell you a little story about when he spoke to, I think it was Waterloo one. It was either Waterloo or the president who put this thing out saying, oh, we're going to get in sports psychology and all these people like this to come in. Because when I got the job and I wanted to bring people in, they said to me, oh, no, you have to do it your own. So I was like first team coach, goalkeeper coach, fitness coach. I done everything on my own. There was no one with me. I just had a couple of Thai coaches. So it was sort of one of them situations. The story wasn't, if you can't remember it this time. They actually said, oh, we're going to bring in a sports psychologist. Jason was talking to me, Dad's been doing this since he's been here. with the new sport psychology system, didn't it? So just a bit of it's sometimes what you have to put up with.
Thailand is a bit like that. So, Jason, what were your first impressions of the players and the playing style when you first arrived?
Technically very good. Physically, I think they were a little bit behind. Tactically, a little bit behind at the time. They're all playing 3-5-2, including the national team, which, the national team, Peter had a lot of success there over the 5 years he was there. We missed out on the league. And the first season I was there, my remit was to win the league with BEC. We missed out on the league on goal difference the first year, and I just felt the second year, I thought everyone's playing a 3-5-2. We'll play a 4-4-2. We had some good wingers at the time, some quick players. Second season, I think we lost one game all season and won the league at a breeze. So tactically, as I said, they needed a little bit of improvement. Once it sort of, you worked on it and they could do it, it was great. But I think they were a little bit behind. Technically, great players. We did a lot of street football going on there, even now. Could they be doing better? I think since my dad's left the national team, I think they've been to that second phase of the World Cup once since then. So have they improved as a national team? Probably not, no. Has the league improved? Yes, it has. Has the quality of the league improved? Yes. Has the support base improved? Yes. And it was all sort of things that we were saying to them at the time. You need to have sort of teams from areas, not just Bangkok Bank and BEC Teros. So it needs to be sort of an area which now that they've done Biruram, Phuket and all the rest of it. So they've done that side of it well. But has the football improved? And yeah, the national team hasn't really pushed on as such. And whether that's down to the influx of foreign players, because what tends to happen is they'll flood the sort of the middle of the pitch with centre halves and midfield and strikers, which has a hindrance on the local development there. So I just don't see it's moved forward that much. But they've got a passion for football. It's a footballing nation. It's 60 odd million people. But could they do better? I think yes, they should be really.
I think it's often talked about that the spine of the team is often lacking because of all the imports that we have these days, and the lack of really top quality academies lets us down because it hasn't really changed too much since your time. Peter, you achieved incredible success for Thailand. Really, you won 2 ASEAN Cups. What were you think was the key thing that you brought in that changed the team and changed the direction of it all?
As I said, I think it's changing the mental attitude of the players. That was the number one priority for me. I always was well organised with the team, so we're diligently at making sure that everyone knew what their role was in the team. And I would say that probably later on in the FA, they always come up with this thing saying have a backup plan. And I always had a backup plan because I just felt that games you have to, if you're playing again, for instance, when we played Korea in the in the quarter-final, we end up losing 2 players. So if you don't have a backup plan, then, and I'm looking at my bench, and my bench is all like on the hands and saying, that's it, finished now. So the backup plan was that I needed to speak to the players, spoke to the players. Big Hoy, who was then my translator, he said, the hairs on the back of my head were standing on end the way that you were touched, explaining to me to tell the players what to do and how to win the game. It become a famous thing because you've got 9 players on the field and screaming to them, please tell me it's a golden goal. Because if it isn't a golden goal, we haven't got to count the altitudes. But if it's a golden goal, I think we can win it. And of course, I had a couple of players in the team who could strike the ball very well. And I just said, you've got to come out as centre halves and you've got to try and join in, and then you've got to try and create something. And I said to these 2 players, one was left-footed, who played for Jason, and the other one was Wong. And I said to them, if you get on the ball, just have a pop. And of course, he touches the ball for him. My head is looking this way to make sure the defence is all ready. And as I'm turning my head, he hits this ball that just screams into the roof of the net. And the stadium was full, and it was just erupted, absolutely erupted. And even to this day, I still watch it now and think to myself, what a spike that was.
It was a huge, I remember seeing it as well. And what do you think the biggest obstacles were dealing with when you first came? Was it language or culture?
I would say that was my biggest regret, is that I didn't they wouldn't spend time to. I said to them about getting someone to learn me Thai, and they kept saying, yeah, we'll do, but they didn't. I don't think they wanted me to talk Thai. I think they wanted to, just keep it the way it was. So you learn your little bit of the Thai language and the culture and everything. But at the end of the day, football is football. They understand. And I'm always a great believer. You can speak 1,000 words, but I can show them in 5 minutes what they have to do. And that's what I used to do. The teacher was showing them demonstration and showing them what they had to do. And I think that they started to take it on board even more. I must admit, we had some decent players. Zico, he was probably one of the top players that played in Thailand, went on to coach. And he could score goals. He was just one of them players that could score goals. And it was just a little bit disappointing. I think he could have made it in the UK if he would have. They didn't tell me. They sent him to the UK and they didn't, in my opinion. And unfortunately, it didn't work out for him, because of he needed to go with someone else. I said to them at the time, should have went with someone else. Two of you should have went together, and I'm sure that he would have made it in the game.
Yeah, I think it's probably one of the biggest regrets in Thailand. He could have been the bridge towards the game a bit more, bringing in more Thai players elsewhere, I believe. But, another chance hopefully comes along. Jason, you've had the opportunity to coach at club level in Thailand and Singapore. How would you compare the Thai league to other leagues at that time?
At that time, probably Singapore was the top league. It was well organised. It was well paid. I went there, I think it was 2002, and they were drawing all the best players from Southeast Asia. A lot of the Thai national team players who played under my dad played in Singapore. They all wanted to go there. The money was quite good, and I think if you look at it compared to now, the top league in Southeast Asia is probably Thailand, really. Indonesia is still a good league. Malaysian league's good. The Vietnamese league is good. But, the Singapore league's probably one of the worst ones, really. I think it's starting to improve now. Very well organised. But they had sort of great plans of wanting to get to a World Cup, and which was kind of, I thought, was a little bit of an impossible task looking at the nation. I thought the only chance they've probably got of going to the World Cup is probably hosting it. But no, I think they're all different culturally, although they're quite close together. Before in Thailand, Bangkok was very, very different. The same with Indonesia. And again, working in India, the culture's a lot different here. I think if you look at the talent, certainly in Asia, it's there. We talk about it here in India. You look at the population. I was quite pleasantly surprised at coming here thinking it was just going to be all cricket. And in Bangalore, it's not really. There's more kids playing football than there is cricket. So you look at the potential wise, and that's not just here. Indonesia was similar. It's a huge nation. I think it's 4th or 5th largest nation in the world. And we always said, bloody hell, if they got things right here, they organised things right, they got the youth academy right, they should be kicking on in world football, really. And yet, none of them really have. And you wonder why they're being held back. As you've mentioned about the youth academy systems are not great. The coach education's not great. Needs to be improved. But once you do get it right, you get a lot of success. And you look at Buriram, for instance. He's built a football club in the middle of nowhere, really, and built a huge football club. He's got the infrastructure right. Obviously, he's got a stadium. Money does help if you can bring in the better players. And if you look at the span of the last 10 years, how he's grown the club, it's unbelievable, really. And it's just a shame that other clubs in Thailand couldn't follow the same sort of thing, really, because I think there'd all be a force then in Asia, and Buriram are doing that slightly, but it's just a shame other clubs couldn't do it in Southeast Asia.
I think maybe it might still come, we'll see. The Thai league's changed an awful lot since you were both there. It's now a lot more competitive, a lot more professional, I say. But there's obviously a lot more foreigners in the league now as well. And do you think that's a good thing or a bad thing for the league overall?
I think that, when I was there and when Jason came, is that the biggest problem that I had was all the teams based in Bangkok. So I could go to games. I could see all the players within a month because I'd go to games in Bangkok. And I said to the FA at the time, I said, look, you can't be just in here. You've got to be a nationwide. You've got our teams in Phuket, in, like Buriram and Chiang Mai, Chiang Rai, because there's talent all over the country, and you're not going to spot that talent. He said, oh, we find out about it. And I said, well, you don't really, because you might have players in Chiang Mai who haven't got a team to go to, and they just have a kick around in the street. So they haven't got really use of, you haven't got an academy. So the big thing you want to be pushing is to be a nationwide league, which, as we know later on, the penny dropped, and that's what they realised that they had to do. And it ended up with a situation where the team started to get stronger. But Iran brought in a lot of Spanish players and foreign players, which they generated, because what they did at times was that they brought in players who then they sold on back to Spain or back to somewhere in Europe. So there was and I kept saying to this will be a self-generation thing. If you get the right people, you're going to end up selling them. And if you get the right young players, then you're going to build a platform for them players to go abroad. Because when I spoke to the likes of Deco and Turdsaf and people like that, they wanted to play abroad. They wanted to go and play their trade abroad. And, they did. They went to Singapore, and Zico, of course, went to Vietnam, played in Vietnam and coached in Vietnam. It was when they took over as national coaches, he had Chuck with him, and he had a couple of the other lads, and I'd said to him, how is it going? To Zico, and Zico just said, we just do what you did. So what do you mean? So he said, whatever you did as a coach, we've just followed what you do and do exactly the same things as what you did. I said, all right, okay. I had a friend who's in Singapore who went to Thailand and ended up sending me pictures of him having a picture with like half a dozen of the Thai players. And he was just sending me messages saying, oh, all the Thai players, really, really thank you for what you achieved and what you did for them and brought them into the squad. Because there were players that I'd seen, like Turdsaf. I went to see Turdsaf. In fact, I think Jason was with me when we went to see Turdsaf. And I'm like, why is he not in the team? So he said, well, no, it's Pickett. And I said, but he can play. And he went, yeah, and Undernard and one thing. And I said, no, he's in the team. And of course, so at first I thought he was about 25, but he looked about 45. And then found out he was 29, I think, when I brought, because I wanted to play him in the SEA Games, because I thought he was 23. But they told me, no, he's a bit off of that age. But that's what I mean. We end up, if I look back on the squad that I had and how many players come through in the 5 years that I was there, you're probably looking at hundreds of players that I brought in and sort of nurtured through. Some of them might have only played 1 or 2 games, but there was a lot of them who played a lot of games, for me. And it was always a question of getting up there and seeing the players and watching, and I think that's what I found when Brian Robson took over and when Reedy took over. And they said to me, what's it like? So I said to him, you got to wear. So they went, what do you mean? So I said, you've got to wear, you've got to put the hours in, because they don't know. You just think that you can tell them and they'll know what to do. I said, you've got to physically go through everything with them. And the way you want to play, you have to coach them into the way you want. And unfortunately, they got the shock of their life, I think. I think that they realised, no disrespect to Brian, but Brian wasn't, when I was asking players, he wasn't coaching as much. He was just sort of walking around and giving his opinion. So, that I always felt, and I always said, if you don't get out there and do the coaching and do the way, you're never going to be successful.
I suppose it maybe differs from, let's say, if you are managing a European international team or South American international team, whereas they're all coached by their own team. So it's more just bringing the players together, and this is actually more of a coach. It's almost like being a club manager, where you're bringing players together and bringing them on and developing them on further.
Yeah, certainly over there, there are probably a couple of teams that made a mistake. So, for instance, Sven came over to BEC, and I said straight away, that's not going to work. Sven's not a coach. So they just think they're bringing in these big coaches, which is great manager, God rest his soul. But what they tended to do is they brought a team together who then delivered all the coaching. You know, you look at Alex Ferguson. Alex Ferguson didn't coach. You know, he brought in the best coaches around to do it for him. I didn't say he didn't have any input. Certainly, if they're bringing you in as a foreign coach as such, they expect you to be doing the coaching. And if that's not your strong point, you're probably going to struggle. You know, an example my dad said with Brian. Brian wasn't a coach. He was a good manager, but unless he's got a strong team that he can bring with him, you know, he's always going to struggle. I think that's coaching and management. What are your strengths and what are your weaknesses? But if they're bringing you in and you in on your own, you've got to have that strong coaching background, I think. And that's myself and my dad. We got on the coaching fit. We got on the pitch and we done the coaching and put the graft in, really.
And do you think being there together helped a lot? You know, being able to work both for club and nation, it helped to interact it all together.
Yes, definitely. I mean, I looked at a picture. The picture popped up the other day of one of the Thai national team. They're playing in, it was the Middle East. Counted the players. And 9 of them were my players at BC Terror. So I probably helped him because, you know, he probably knew that these players were coming, they were quite fit. You know, he knew the fitness levels were going to be quite high. And no disrespect to other coaches, probably they didn't look at that side of it too much. But, you know, there was a big influx of BC players, which was a problem for me because the national team got access to the players. So it wasn't like now where they get like a week before international break. You know, my dad was getting sort of access to them during the week, so they were going off to the national team. Bare bones of a squad of like 6 players, and thinking, I can't really do anything today because I haven't got my squad here. Other teams it was 1 or 2, but I had most of my players were gone type of things. Again, you look at the national team, they don't get that time with the players now. So, you know, he was quite lucky that he got that time with the players and pre-tournament. It wasn't just a week before. Like you said, he got like 3 or 4 weeks working with the team before preparation for a tournament. So that certainly helps. But, you know, at the time, as I said, a majority of a lot of BC Terror players, which was good for both of us, really.
And so what were your thoughts on the future of the Thai national team? How do they go that step further now and, I don't know, move up to a level where they can compete with the other big teams in Asia? Because we seem to be good at the ASEAN level. We're fine, but that next step up to beat the Japanese and the Koreans, is it just a mentality thing?
I think you should get Jason Withe back and get them mentally right again. I think that, you know, you've got to, it's working on that mentality in the players and changing that mentality. And I think that once you prove that you can beat them, and we did it, you know, I remember us beating them. When I first went there, we beat a man, and everyone was like, we never beat a man. But, you know, I got to the stage where we were very, very strong in thinking, well, we can beat anyone once we get on the pitch, we can beat anyone. And I think that changes everything about them as players, management, because they didn't believe it, for her to convert the managers as well to say to them, you know, we can beat anyone, we just need to be on the same pitch. And I think, you know, we were making inroads. I think that we were making inroads, and I think we were being successful. And unfortunately, it just so happened that the president at the time decided that he wanted to bring a Brazilian coach in again, because they think that, you know, Brazilian coaches, South American coaches are the best. So they brought the coach that they had before, who wasn't successful, but they brought him in ahead of me. Like I said, you know, at the time, that's what you think you want to do. Get on with it, doesn't it?
I mean, it proved to be the wrong decision. I'm sure of that.
Well, it did, because you only have to look at what they'd achieved. And I think that we all sort of think to ourselves that, and this is what you've got to do when you're a coach manager. And the same is when I was a player, is that you've got to have the mentality to say, you know, I make this statement, is that football, you start at the rung of the ladder and you climb the ladder. So you're striving to get to the ladder. And I'll say this from a promotional speaking as well, is that you're striving to get up the ladder. And along the way, you're going to fall. You're going to trip up and you're going to fall down the ladder. But the big, strong people will stop themselves falling and they'll start to climb again. because they've got this ambition in their heads. So they start climbing again. And then I had a couple of players who said, well, how tall is the ladder? I said, never ended. So he went, what do you mean? And I said, never ends. If it ends, you might as well pack in. And I went, that's enough. So it's about having that mentality of being successful, but not resting on your laurels. Because that was always a big issue with a lot of players. They thought that they'd done it now. And unfortunately, even with Thailand, there was players who thought they'd done it. And at the team, you get above your station and you're getting better and better. You're just sitting on the fence now. So it's always, that's the way I look at it. That's the way I look at life, and that's the way I look at football and about coaching.
Always be looking upwards and onwards, the next challenge sort of thing. Thank you so much for your time, guys. I had a couple of questions sent to me from people who listen to the podcast who wanted to know, how do you motivate players in Thailand? How do you get your messages across? Because often with communication, is it just leading by example and demonstration, or good translators?
What I said to you is that demonstration speaks 1,000 words. They understand demonstrations, and they understand motivation. They can tell, like players know, or used to know, my voice tone. So my voice tone would go decibels if I wasn't happy with what was happening. And they knew. You could see the fear in the time. It was all about demonstration. Sometimes you have to put your arm around them. You have to know which ones you can put your arm. You have to know which ones you can give a reaction to. That's the way it was. It's not just it's not a magic wand that you just go like that and they change. It's hard work. It's hard work that you do, but it's, like I've said to you, it's sports psychology, man management, whatever you want to call it. You've got to have it in your locker.
Jason, how did you find the quality of translators? Obviously, it must vary. Did you feel your message was coming across clearly or not?
Good question. Yes, it was. I struggled the first few months I was there, and I think a lot of was being lost in translation. Really, I had a translator who wasn't quite getting the information across to the players, and one of the players came to me and said who spoke quite good English actually, and said he's not sort of giving the right details over. So once I told that player, right, you're going to be doing the translation from now on, he was a bit, no, it's not my job to do that. It was a bit, but I slightly changed it again just to make sure that message is got across. And once the message did get across, there was 100% sort of change really. So yes, that's important. So I think the players pick up on that passion that that's talked about, sort of being on the coaching field and doing that side of it. But I think just having that passion, they feel that passion with you. But yeah, having that translator is quite important. I think it's certainly at half time, because you've got to get quick messages quickly. And if you're not getting them over and you need to make changes, it's easier on the football field because you can demonstrate, you can show them, you can walk through them, you can put practices on so they can learn from them. But that 15 minutes at half time is quite vital, really, if you need to make changes. So having the right key people in place is quite important.
How did you both find your time in Indonesia after you left Thailand? Someone described to me that it was actually the golden era of Indonesian football when you were both involved with the national team.
Yeah, and I think when I had to go, the biggest one of the lot was having to go to prison to visit the president, getting the stamp on your hand. At the time, there was a bit of controversy, and he was still the president of the association, and unfortunately, we had to have a team meeting there. But it was, to be fair, I mean, I took the job because I thought to myself I could improve them and make them better. And I'd like to think that over the time that I was there, again, we had a situation where the president had his ideas about the way that the team should be playing. And sadly, I thought that we could have stepped on and went further and further, but it was curtailed some. Good players, had some very good players. Difference in the players because they were more physically stronger than some of the Thai players. So it was something that we sort of worked on with regards to the players. And as I said, I thought that we had some decent players. We could have. The big thing was at the time is that I was saying to them, because I was finding out that they had a lot of players who were living in Holland and places like this. And I said to him, well, why don't you not? And he went, oh, no, we can't do that. And all of a sudden, I look at Thailand and I look at Indonesia, And they've now got a lot of influx of, foreign players who are sort of mother with child, fathers.
I think Indonesia, Indonesia in particular have got loads there.
Yeah, Philippines is the same. When I worked in the Philippines, I remember turning up my first day, like, why have we got all these foreign players? And they went, no, he's not foreign, he's local. I went, he's got a Cockney accent, how is he local? Yeah, his mother's Thai, and then there's somebody else the same, and they were all over sort of Europe, which is great, because, they were genuinely had a parent who was local. Again, they were not tapping into that sort of talent pool and developing it. I think that, I would say, certainly my time in Asia is, are they getting the grassroots right? Are they getting that foundations right? I think that's something that they're not doing. If you look at Europe and certainly, England, the academy system and the foundations are there quite early on, which they're not really there in Asia. I think they're playing a lot of catch up really. If you got that right, I think they could certainly be a force.
Jason, do you see yourself coming back into club management, like first team management?
You never know, really. 53 now, so I'm not a spring chicken anymore, but I'm head of youth at Bangalore FC and enjoying it. Again, it's just working in a different country, in a different culture, so I'm just enjoying that side of it. But never say never. I do miss Thailand. Certainly
Good to see you back over here.
The football and the food. No, I mean, Peter's going over soon, so he's going to be there. I think he's going over in a couple of months. But no, you're always drawn back there. My wife's from England, but we married in Hua Hin in Thailand, so it's we've got a lot of affection.
I hope to both see you back over here again soon. Peter, one last question. Someone asked me, have your knees recovered yet from playing in Portland on that artificial pitch?
I didn't really play in Portland. I played in a few places with an artificial pitch. The worst one I ever played on was QPR and Luton Town. They were bloody awful. I've had 2 knee replacements now. I had a hip replacement at 43, 2 knees replaced. So yeah, just the wear and tear is just wouldn't change anything, to be perfectly honest. People say to me, but no, wouldn't change anything.
When you go to the reunion, take the bill. Yeah, thank you very much for your time, guys. Really appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you.
See you when I'm
for sure. I look forward to it.